Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about Dead Hard and why I think people run Dead Hard so frequently, why it's like the most frequently seen perk in the entire game on the survivor side. And it is not necessarily to do with its strength, but I do want to definitely say that Dead Hard is one of the best perks in the game without a doubt. It is probably first or second best exhaustion perk in the entire game. So if that is a reason alone to run it, that's a pretty good reason. But I don't think that's the main reason people run it. Because I do think on average, you're going to get more value out of a perk like Sprint Burst, for example. Sprint Burst, pretty much every single time you run Sprint Burst, you will always get value out of it in some way or another. You will always get value from it. But Dead Hard, if you play Survivor and run Dead Hard, you know that shit is not consistent. It's not going to work half the time. Now, if you only play Killer, you're going to think Dead Hard is way more consistent than it actually is because you don't see the failed Dead Hards half the time. If they're too late, you're not going to see that. You'll only see it if it's too early, so you don't really have an exact perspective. But if you really do use Dead Hard, just because you know it's pretty safe under a pallet doesn't mean you're going to be able to get to the pallet in time. Like, there's still a lot of stipulations that go into getting a successful Dead Hard, so half the time it's still not going to really do anything. And a perk like Sprint Burst will always have its value. You're always going to be able to sprint. Even if it's just getting to a gen faster, it's still giving you some type of value. But if Sprint Burst is more consistent for more players and more players will get more value out of something like Sprint Burst, why do we still see more Dead Hard? And the answer is because it's fun. It's just the most fun exhaustion perk in the entire game. Head on is a good argument, but I don't even consider head on a real exhaustion perk. When we say exhaustion perk, I think of the things that make you move fast, you know? And Dead Hard is the most fun one to use in the game because think about Survivor gameplay. What do you actually have to do as Survivor if you're getting chased? You have pallets to drop and windows to vault, and that's it. You have basically two options in a chase. It's a very, very simple game for survivors when you're getting chased. There's a rare third option if you have like a full perk build to actually lose the killer in a chase, but that's very perk reliant, and I'm just going to focus on the main defenses that survivors have, which is just vaulting and pallets. And so when you introduce Dead Hard, you're basically introducing 50% more gameplay to the survivor. It's like going from like Dark Souls 3 to Elden Ring, introducing a jump feature. It completely changes the way you're able to play the entire game, and it makes what is normally a pretty stale, uninteresting, series of gameplay choices into something more interesting because now you have way more choices in a chase. And, half the time it's not going to do anything for you, but having that option is really nice, and it feels really good to be able to do that stuff in a chase. And that, I think, is the main reason that people run Dead Hard. Because if we were looking for the perk that would give them the most consistent value, people would be running Sprint Burst, or even Lithe is going to give you more consistent value than Dead Hard. So it's not that they're looking for the most consistent or even effective perk, it's the perk that is the most fun to use, because hitting a Dead Hard is way more interesting than hitting a Sprint Burst. Even hitting a 99 Sprint Burst is less exciting than hitting an actual Dead Hard. And I'm willing to bet if we change Dead Hard for a day and made it so the Dead Hard doesn't even protect you whatsoever, but if the killer hits you in the Dead Hard window, it plays like a fart sound and the killer gets a dunce cap on their head, it would still be the most popular survivor perk because it would just be hilarious and it would still be exactly as fun. Even if you went down, it would still be as fun. And I think that's the whole point of the perk, and that's why it's so popular. Not because it's the best, although it is extremely good. It's because it's the most interesting and fun. That's why if we do go and nerf Dead Hard to the point of it being useless, what's going to happen is we're just going to get everyone switching to Sprint Burst instead. And I'm willing to bet the community is going to complain just as much about Sprint Burst as they do about Dead Hard. Because if I'm chasing someone in the open and then they just have Sprint Burst and they can make it to an actual tile instead of the dead zone they were currently at, that never I've never been hit by a Sprint Burst and went, damn, nice Sprint Burst. But I've been hit by a Dead Hard in the open and went, damn, how did you time that so well? That was amazing. Like, I've never been proud of someone for hitting a fat Sprint Burst. That just doesn't really happen. So I'm willing to bet the community will complain just as much about everyone running Sprint Burst because it's even less counterable than Dead Hard. Dead Hard, your main option is using it at a pallet when it becomes very hard to counter. Not impossible, but pretty hard to counter. Sprint Burst basically has no counter if they're just saving it, especially if they know how to 99 it. There's no counterplay whatsoever to it. It's going to always get them somewhere relatively safe. And so if we remove Dead Hard and we remove that fun option for the survivors, we're just going to have Sprint Bursts everywhere and everyone's going to be just as upset. and then we're going to shift the goalpost to life, and then we're going to shift the goalpost until there's no exhaustion perks left. That's sort of why I think Dead Hard is okay. It's certainly frustrating for killers like Huntress and Demo, and maybe you can change Dead Hard to not work on ranged powers or something like that, because that is stupid and basically no counterplay. But in every other scenario, I find it to be the most enjoyable as Survivor and as Killer. Because the other options are just, they just get away from you and there's no chance for you to do anything. At least swinging through a pallet, you might get the timing down. If they just sprint burst somewhere, there's nothing, they're just gone. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's it. I just want to talk about that. I don't even think this is necessarily a hot take. I do think legitimately the reason people use it the most is because it's the most fun perk. But that's it. Thanks for watching. See ya.